Welcome to the podcast. This is a space where we tap into our truth, our essence, where we go to the depths within to seek our wounding and find a way to transmute it. These conversations will not only set ourselves up for amazing changes within our lives, but will also allow us to hold space for those around us. I believe that through these conversations, we will start to heal the feminine and tap into our divine essence. And then we will be able to hold space for the divine masculine, calling them up to a greater version of themselves. Let's dive in. I am so excited to bring you this episode today. This episode was recorded months and months ago. When I recorded this episode, I had no idea when it would come out, and it feels perfect that it's coming out now. It is a couple weeks before I head back to Costa Rica, to the land where I did my first ayahuasca experience almost a year ago. It is just under 1 week before I host my first cacao and psilocybin journey. This particular one is a microdosing journey, so not the deeper journeys that I discuss in this podcast, but it still feels beautiful and timely. I have also signed up to sit with ayahuasca once again in April. She has been deeply calling me in many different ways, and I'm ready to answer that call and to sit with her. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, beautiful humans. I am so excited for this conversation today and having this conversation. I'm actually having this conversation with you from my bed. There's a lot of deep healing and integrating going on in my world right now as I bring this to you, and it just feels like the perfect setting to talk about what we're going to talk about today. So what I want to bring to you today is a conversation that I get asked about a lot, and that is working with various medicines, plant medicines, like ayahuasca or kambo or psilocybin, things that I have tried on my journey, and just the deep curiosity that others have had about what my experience has been so far. And so I want to share a little bit of that with you today and my perspective and my experience with plant medicines, because it's been my experience that everyone's experience is very different. And even in multiple experiences that I've had with the same medicine. So for example, each ayahuasca sitting is different. They're always different. So each ayahuasca sitting is different. Each time I sit with mushrooms, it's different. Each time I've done kambo, it's been very different. So really just honoring and knowing that this is my story, this is my experience, and where there are some commonalities and threads of similarity between experiences, this isn't necessarily going to be yours if you were to try these medicines. And the one thing that I want to talk about today, because often when I get asked about medicine ceremonies, it comes from this place of like, oh, maybe I should do that, and then I wouldn't feel like this anymore, or maybe I should do that, and then maybe I wouldn't have such a hard time with this, or maybe I should do that. It tends to come with the question of people wondering if it will help them shift what they're going through, or relieve or what they're feeling, or change their mindset. And in some ways it can, but it's really not this fix all. It's really not this fun. It is fun in some ways, but it's not this fun, jovial experience. I remember playing around with certain things when I was younger. I actually tried mushrooms a few times when I was in my teens and 20s, and looking back, it didn't make sense in the way that I wanted to use it. Like, I tried mushrooms a couple times in like a party setting, and back in those days, I was really in this space of like wanting to forget, wanting to numb, wanting to distract, wanting to slow down my mind, wanting to, just be somewhere else. And so it makes sense now in my experience with mushrooms why each time I did it, I ended up just crying and like not having any fun. And I was like, what? I don't, I don't get it. But that's it. This is the perfect prelude to the conversation today. So any of these medicines, again, this is my experience, psilocybin, ayahuasca, kambo, these are not numbing substances. These are not, like, sure, it might sound fun to go to Costa Rica for a week and do ayahuasca, or it might sound fun to go to the mountains of North Carolina, or it might sound fun to go to Arizona, or it might sound fun to sit with a shaman. And it is a beautiful, sacred experience, but it's just that it's a sacred experience. And I would encourage anyone to address it with like a reverence and a power that it demands, because these medicines are not about turning away. These medicines are about turning within. These medicines are about showing you the things that lie within you, the pain, the stuck energy, the distractions, the trauma, the healing that still needs to be done. Like, these are potent mirrors into the self. And so my encouragement every time I'm asked this is like, sitting with the medicine is beautiful. Sitting with the medicine is challenging. Sitting with the medicine can be very intense, and it's only a fraction of the work. Each time has been, and each different type of medicine has been so beautiful. But for me, sitting with the medicine is definitely an initiation. I always feel like there's a couple of initiations. It's the answering the call to sit with the medicine. Then there's sitting with the medicine. And then the third initiation for me in any experience tends to be the integration of the medicine, what the medicine has taught me, or what it is bringing up within me, or what is being asked to be purged. And sometimes that looks like purging after the medicine has been administered, like days after, weeks after, and purging can look all different ways. It can look like crying. It can look like releasing emotion, however you express your own emotions. It can look like, sneezing, coughing, burping, pooping. Like, it literally is any way that your body excretes or gets rid of things. That is an option. When I talk about purging, that's what I mean. So it literally is however your body wants to release. It can come with lots of body aches. It can come with lots of transitions of thoughts and mindset work that needs to occur after the medicine or the ceremony space has been complete. And that, for me, again, like I said, has been the deepest work, has been in some ways the hardest part. It has been fairly easy for me to answer the call and trust the call to go sit with the medicine. I haven't had a lot of resistance or fear ever sitting with the medicine. And so those have felt like easier parts for me. But the integration, coming back home and integrating the lessons, the knowledge, the wisdom, or just honoring whatever's going on in my body, has been such an experience. So I want to take you through a little moment. I want you, if you can, not if you're driving, but if you can, close your eyes and just for a moment, imagine that you let's use the analogy of sleep. Let's imagine for one moment you go to bed one night and you go to sleep and you have all of these crazy, wild, amazing dreams. There's so much wisdom that comes through. And in the morning when you wake up, whatever is let's say your deepest wound. For me, one of the things I had to release was not being worthy or feeling unworthy. So imagine you wake up in the morning and all of a sudden that feeling of unworthiness, or that feeling of not enoughness, or that feeling or fear of abandonment or rejection, whatever it is for you, is just gone. There's no little, it almost feels like there's no wounds to rub up against. There's nothing gnawing at you. There's nothing, in your mind that's really calling your attention, or nothing that your ego is poking at constantly. It just feels in many ways like a blank slate, like a long, empty hallway where nothing is decorated on the walls. There's just space. And at first you're like, oh, well, that's nice. Wow, I feel completely different. And there's this sense of opportunity. There's this sense of being able to create anything that you want now. There's the sense that there's nothing in your way. There's no trepidation. It's all cleared up. And then you start to get ready in your morning. You go out into the world. You do what you would normally do. You get into your everyday life. And you start to notice that even though there's not this trigger sense within anymore, you still have habits that are lingering. You have all of these established relationships in your life that were conducted a particular way, that you showed up in a particular way, based on a belief that you had in the past that was no longer there. And now, because you have this change of feeling, you start showing up differently. And you notice throughout the day how people start interacting with you differently, how things are shifting, how the relationship is shifting, how the way that they talk to you or look at you is shifting. And all of a sudden, you realize that everything is going to change. Not just the feeling of not being worthy, but everything in your life is going to shift based on the changes that occurred within. In the analogy, that dream has changed you forever. Because of what you now know, because of the wisdom, because of the feelings inside, you no longer need to relate to people from that wound. You no longer need to choose the same things. You don't even resonate with the same things that you resonated with before. That might look like wanting to go eat at different places, dress differently, spend time in different spaces. All of a sudden, everything that you were feeling before, everything you felt you couldn't do, or everything that was being dictated by the thing that was inside of you that's no longer there, it shifts your entire world. Because the way that you relate to the world, the way that you relate to yourself, the feelings that you have within shift. And that, for me, is where the work really begins. Because I feel like every time I have a choice, I can easily step back in some ways, in many ways, yes, there's this feeling of this open path and this open doorway, and I can choose whatever I want, and the wound doesn't feel like it's as actively there. It doesn't feel like it's in my body, but in many ways, I can choose to go back to the life that I always had. I can revert back. I can fit into exactly what it is that I was doing before, or I can step into the unknown and explore what's available to me. And I can explore myself, and I can watch to see how these relationships change. I can watch to see how other people react to me, not needing to shift myself in a way to suit them, but really just to honor this new version. And I think that's where, I'm very grateful for the mindset work and the work that I had done prior to working with plant medicines, because a lot of these things and the way that I work with myself and the way that I've worked with other people have really helped me in this integration process, really helped me hold space for myself, helped me trust myself, helped me be okay when things shifted. Help me work with letting go, help me work with allowing, help me working with my trusting, help trust my evolution and my growth, and really just let whatever needed to unfold, unfold. And I think this is an important conversation because not to make it, the last thing I want to do is make it scarier, or I don't want it to feel less accessible or more overwhelming, but I do think it's important to have these conversations to know that like these are life altering experiences. And there are things that are just going to innately shift within you, sometimes in ways that you can't comprehend, you can't explain, you just have a feeling, and sometimes not right away, sometimes months down the road. So it's the decision. I really encourage anyone to make this decision from like an aligned yes. What I would call a soul yes, or a sacred yes, or a sacral yes. In my instance, I have a sacral authority or a gut response, and I live by my human design. So for me, if I get that big sacral yes, and these plant medicine yeses have been like big sacral yeses, like the kind that are a yes in my body without question, and the kind that after I commit generally make me cry, and I can't really understand why, but that's the reaction that's in my body. I would encourage you to make sure that this is coming from within. This is not coming from the ego or the mind thinking that you're going to completely alter your life, or things are going to completely change, and almost have this dictated pattern of what that's going to look like. Because with the medicine, we often receive what we need, but that doesn't mean we receive what we desire. And so my invitation to anyone considering ayahuasca, if you've felt the call, really tapping in with the body. What does the body say? Is this coming from the body? Is this coming from the soul? If it's a yes, then it's probably going to be one of the most profound, beautiful moments of your life. It is life-changing in the most beautiful, honoring way. And if you're being called, you are ready to handle the other pieces that are likely able to handle the other pieces that are on the other side. Just tap in and make sure that, I just ask yourself, does this feel like an aligned yes? Does this feel like a sacred yes? Does this feel like, even if I can't fully understand it, even if there's a little bit of fear, my body knows something my mind does not? That, for me, is one of the most beautiful invitations that I have received from this medicine. And I know it's available for many of you too. So thank you for holding space for this conversation. It's a big one. If you have any questions, please place them below. And maybe there'll be another episode answering your questions. Thank you for listening. It is my absolute honor, pleasure to hold these conversations, to have a space for these transmissions to come through. It is my belief that through these conversations, we start to heal ourselves and send ripples out into the world. I know you are ready for this. I know the world is ready for this. If you are already thinking of someone else who needs to hear this podcast, I would be absolutely honored for you to share it. And if we're not already friends on Instagram, please come find me at Exponential Alchemy. I will see you soon.